So, chapter number 21, neural control and coordination. Of all the systems in the human body, it is the nervous system which control and coordination all our activities. And homeostasis is also an important function of the nervous system. Nervous system in human beings can be divisible into central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord, whereas the peripheral nervous system consists of two types of nerves, that is afferent nerves and efferent nerves. Afferent nerves carry information to the central nervous system, and the efferent nerves carry information from central nervous system. Afferent carry information to the central nervous system. Efferent nerves, they bring the information from the central nervous system. And the PNS also consists of the skeletal neural system and the autonomous nervous system. Skeletal neural system, it brings message from the central nervous system to the skeletal muscles, whereas the autonomous nervous system brings message from CNS to the involuntary organs. It consists of the sympathetic nerves and parasympathetic nerves. Sympathetic nerves and parasympathetic, they have opposite functions. So, the human brain, it consists of three layers of meninges and protected by 8 cranial bones: frontal, parietal, temporal, occipital, sphenoid, ethmoid, 8 cranial bones. Apart from this, there are 3 layers of meninges: durameter, arachnoid and pyometer. And in the subdural space, subarachnoid space, CSF flows, cerebrospinal fluid. And the brain can be divisible into the 3 portions: forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Forebrain consists of cerebrum and diencephalon. Cerebrum forms the large portion of the brain. It consists of outer cortex and inner medulla. In the cortex region, there is sensory areas and motor areas. There are certain areas which are neither sensory nor motor. Such nerves constitute the association. Such area constitute association area, which control memory and communication. That is also so far not as that's very important. And the brain composed of many neurons. And these neurons, the cortex, in the cortex portion of the neurons, that is the cortex portion, it consists of the cell bodies of neuron. Hence, it gives grayish color. Whereas in the medulla region, in the deep region, so myelinated sheets of neurons are present that gives white color, that is the white matter in the interior region. And in the brain, there are the different things, that is the forebrain consists of cerebrum and diencephalon, as I told you earlier. Diencephalon consists of thalamus, epithalamus, hypothalamus. Hypothalamus controls sleep, appetite, body temperature. And then the appetite, both eating and drinking, is controlled by the hypothalamus. And in the inner, and there are 2 cerebral hemispheres joined by corpus callosum. In the inner region, hippocampus, amygdalus, it forms the limbic system. Along with hypothalamus, it regulates sexual behavior like the excitement and sexual pleasure, emotions like rage, fear, and all those things. So, So that is about the forebrain, which consists of cerebrum and diencephalon. Midbrain connects forebrain with the hindbrain. So it consists of corpora quadrigemina. Corpora quadrigemina. That is the four lobes, optic lobes are present in the midbrain. Midbrain connects forebrain with the hindbrain. That is, it is present between the forebrain and the pons. And the next to this, the hindbrain consists of pons, cerebellum, and medulla oblongata. Pons control facial expressions, and medulla oblongata is the center for almost all, that is the respiration, heartbeat, etc. Cerebellum maintains the body balance. Cerebellar hemispheres are joined by vermis, and then a tree-like structure, that is the cerebellum, which maintains the body balance and also muscular coordination. And so, reflex action. It is an involuntary action in response to the external stimulus called reflex action. There is reflex action. And the pathway of nerve impulses from the time of receiving stimulus to that of response called reflex arc. This, it involves the nerves like sensory nerve, motor nerve, that is the conductors, effectors, are the chief parts associated with this kind of reflex arc. And here in the reflex arc, what happens? The pathway of nerve impulses from the time of receiving stimulus to that of response. So, a cross section of the transfer section of the spinal cord shows outer white matter, inner gray matter, central canal, dorsal root and ventral root. Dorsal root has ganglion which serves as sensory nerve, and the ventral root has no ganglion which serves as the motor nerve. Both the dorsal root and ventral root join to form spinal nerves. And then, so what happens? This the pathway of nerve impulses from the time of receiving stimulus to that of response called reflex arc. So it is the dorsal root which has ganglion, acts as sensor, it brings message to the spinal cord, and it sends back the message through the ventral root, which is the motor nerve. So this is about the reflex arc. And the brain composed of the units of nervous system called neuron. So neuron consists of the cell body called cyton and nerve fiber called axon. So within the cell body, it contains a nucleus and a neuroplasm. Within the neuroplasm, nasal bodies are present. Nasal bodies are made up of RNA and proteins, and they provide energy. And there are tubular dendron, and the dendron further branched into dendrites. And there are certain neurons which has only axon, that is present in the embryonic stage, only axon. They are called monopolar neurons, only axon. And many dendron and dendrites present, that is called multipolar neuron. Multipolar neuron present in the advanced organisms, animals. And then there is bipolar neurons. Bipolar neurons consist of axon and dendron. They are present in the retina of the eyes. And the unbranched neuron that forms axon. Axon composed of box-like cells called Schwann cells. Space between the Schwann cells called node of Ranvier. Terminally it bears telodendria or axon ending. Synaptic bouts. So the dendrites of one neuron is in contact with telodendria of another neuron. Such places of physiological junction called synapses. There are two types of nerves. So nerve fibers which has myelinated sheath called myelinated nerve fibers, and made up of sphingomyelin, which is a lipid, sphingolipid, and hence it gives white color, white matter in the inner region of the cerebrum and in the outer region of the spinal cord, that white matter. And the non-medullated nerve fibers, medullated nerve fibers which have myelin sheath are present in the central nervous system, non-medullated present in the PNS, that is SNS, somatic neural system, as well as autonomous nervous system. So this is about the structure of the neuron, how the conduction of nerve impulses takes place along the synaptic cleft. As I told you earlier, dendrites of one neuron is in contact with telodendria, that is the axon ending of another neuron. Such places a physiological junction called synapsis, and how the transmission of nerve impulses takes place across the synapses means there is postsynaptic membrane and presynaptic membrane, and there is cleft, synaptic cleft, and in this axon ending many neurotransmitters are present, and receptors get attached to the post synaptic membrane, and these through the vesicles of the neuroreceptors join with the neurotransmitters, join with the receptors, forming a complexes. Thus the information will be passed on. This is about the synaptic transmission. And conduction of nerve impulses along the fiber takes place in two steps, that is the resting potential stage and action potential stage. During the resting potential stage, what happens means the nerve fiber is permeable to not permeable to sodium, but it is permeable to potassium and certain proteins, and it is not impermeable to negatively charged proteins and sodium. As a result, in the resting potential stage, negatively charged proteins are present outside, and Na plus are also present outside. But inside already negatively charged present, and K plus ions are present. That is the resting potential stage. Where the impulse is present, there what happens? It becomes action potential stage. So then the membrane becomes permeable to the Na plus ions, and as a result K plus ions move out, and these Na plus ions which are present in the inner region, they are short-lived, and the negatively charged ions also move out along with the K plus ions. For every 3 Na plus ions move out and 2 move in, and 2 K plus, and then for every 3 Na plus ions move in and 2 K plus ions they move out, and this is called action potential stage. And as the stimulus pass on, the region ahead becomes the action potential stage, and in the region behind, once again the resting potential stage is formed. Thus the conduction of nerve impulses takes place along the nerve fibers. After this, the sense organs. Eye is the sense organ which receives the stimulus light, and this eyeball composed of 3 layers: sclera, choroid, and retina. Sclera is the outermost layer, and sclera, choroid, and retina. Choroid is the thick region which has blood vessels, and thin in the anterior region and thick towards the posterior region to form ciliary body, and it is continued as iris, which is the pigmented one, and the dilation or diameter of a pupil is controlled by the iris. And then in the choroid region there is a biconvex lens. In the center of the lens there is pupil which regulates the amount of light. That is actually the iris which regulates the diameter of the pupil. So the space between and then the innermost layer of the upper and lower lid extend over cornea as the conjunctiva, and then the space between the lens and the cornea, then it is called aqueous humor, and the space between lens and the retina, that is called vitreous humor. The innermost layer is sclera choroid retina. So this retina consists of rods and cones, and this retina also consists of the ganglion cells, bipolar cells, and photoreceptors. Photoreceptors are nothing but rods and cones. Rods are sensitive to dim light, that is scotopic, it has scotopic vision, whereas the cones have photopic vision and color vision, especially for the red, green and blue colors. And the rods have a purple reddish protein pigment called rhodopsin, and it is a derivative of vitamin A. And regions where the photoreceptors are absent called blind spot. At the posterior pole of the eye, lateral to the blind spot, there is yellowish pigment spot called macula lutea present, with a central pit called fovea, where cones are densely packed in the fovea region. The light cannot be perceived. That region is called the blind spot. When the light, how does the eye works? When the light enters through the cornea, it is the aqueous humor and vitreous humor refract the light and made it to fall on the retina. And in the retina there are two kinds of the proteins, opsin and retinal are present, and this light separates the opsin from the retinal. Because of this, certain changes takes place. The light energy will be converted into chemical energy, and then through the retina, that is the ganglion cells and bipolar cells, the information will be sent to the optic nerve to the brain. Next to this, ear. Ear is the sense organ which receives the stimulus sound. Ear can be divisible into the ear, external ear, middle ear and internal ear. External ear consists of external pinna, auditory canal and tympanum, obliquely placed structure, and middle ear consists of malleus incus stapes. And the inner ear consists of different parts like the sacculus, semicircular canals, and then totolith membrane, oval window, organ of Carti, and then perilimb, endolimb, labyrinth, cochlea, utriculus, and then the cristae ampullaris and macula. These are all the various parts associated with the inner ear. In the inner ear there is perilimb and endolimb, and fluid-filled chambers are called scala, and scala vestibula, scala media, scala tympani are present. Scala vestibula with the basilar membrane and the tectorial membrane, it encloses the perilimb, and scala media, it encloses the endolimb, and scala tibium, it encloses both perilimb and the endolimb. And The semicircular canals, utriculus, sacculus, semicircular canals maintain the balance. Cristae, macula also maintains the balance. And then here a snail-like structure, a coiled structure of labyrinth is called cochlea, and this cochlea which encloses various kinds of limbs and a rill is produced in the limb that will be passed on to basilar membrane. From the basilar membrane, tectorial membrane to auditory nerve to the brain. Thus we can able to listen. So this is about the working mechanism of the ear, and the different parts are of the ear and all those things are very important. And please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.